I'll say again, it's a lovely, crisp winter morning here in Berkeley, and I hope it's fine where you are. We are having our one-day sitting, and we are still in hybrid mode. We're still being careful about the pandemic. Today, what's really nice is that actually all of the residents are sitting. And we have been in the Zendo this morning, and now we're back in our respective places so that we can hear the lecture and participate. But it feels really good to be in the Zendo. And I assume that most of you know that we have that we are planning to have our staged opening beginning on March 14th. And you may have some questions about that, which we can get to in the Q&A, but we're really happy to be coming back in person with social distancing, with required vaccination, and for the present, with masks for Zazen and for chanting. But we will be back in there on weekdays anyway, and then we will we'll extend after we get all those wrinkles ironed out. We'll extend that to afternoon, and then we'll find out how to extend it to Saturdays and sessions. So at last, that is in process. I didn't really certainly did not compose a talk this morning, but there are a number of things that are on my mind, and I wanted to begin with a quotation that Edward Brown, in his excellent lecture last week, shared, and then follow it in a few moments with another one that has been really important to me. These are both from Shunryu Suzuki Roshi. And Edward quoted this one. One day, Suzuki Roshi said, "Life is basically impossible." Life is basically impossible. Then he got up and he left the Zendo. The next day, a student asked, "Suzuki Roshi, yesterday you said that life is basically impossible. What are we going to do?" And Suzuki Roshi replied, "You do it every day." So this is how we live. We think of, there's so many obstacles and barriers and challenges in our life, and yet we do it every day to the best of our ability. We just move through our life step by step, and it's the life that we go through is quite amazing. It's in other earlier days on the planet, your life was governed by the seasons and by the time of day and by the agricultural tasks that you may have needed to support yourself. And now, just think of the complexities that we face. The number of machines that we interact with, the technology we have to deal with, all the exigencies of society that we have to work with and see ourselves part of, when you think about it, it's impossible. How could anyone ever do this? Remembering uh, when I was a kid, like maybe 5 or 6, uh, every weekend we would drive out uh, from our home on Long Island to across the Long Island Sound to a place called City Island, which is uh, sort of on the coast of the Bronx in New York City, which is where my grandfather kept a boat. And it was kind of a complicated journey in our car. And I think at that time we had like a 1948 Oldsmobile convertible, and I was in the back seat. And I remember wondering, how does my father know how to get to this place and what turns to make to arrive where he wants to? And thinking, am I ever going to know this? How could I possibly ever know this? It seemed impossible. And I think that's one of the impossibilities of life that Suzuki Roshi was pointing to when he said that life is basically impossible. What we're doing today is basically impossible. We are now 2 years into this pandemic. We're 2 years into doing something that we never imagined. We never imagined that the whole society would be masked and socially distanced, and that so much of our relationship and communication would depend on these media like Zoom. And the thought that our Zen practice would depend on that is completely unimaginable, impossible. We had, I'm part of an organization called the Soto Zen Buddhist Association, which Sojin was one of the founders of. And, we had a big controversy a number of years ago because there were some places that were promoting online Zen. What an outrageous idea! Online Zen. Zen has to be in person. It has to be face to face. And we said, online Zen is not okay. A teacher who is doing that exclusively cannot be a member of our organization. Well, guess who had the last word on that issue? We're doing this. We've been doing it with a certain amount of grace and facility. We're doing the impossible every day, which doesn't mean that we devalue this face-to-face. And warm hand to warm hand. That's also still essential. But we've come to, we've been stretched and pulled, and sometimes certainly against our will and against our wishes, into this new era. And that's what we're dealing with. This is what's presented to us. That's what we're dealing with. That's what Suzuki Roshi meant when he said, you do it every day. And I'm so grateful that we have this practice to rely on. We have this practice as a refuge in Buddha, refuge in Dharma, refuge in Sangha, all of which are embodied in our refuge in this Zazen practice, which extends to everything that we do. And Zazen itself, you could say, Zazen is basically impossible. Because I don't think there's anybody on this screen who could say with absolute precision what Zazen is. We can't really get our mind around it, and yet we do it every day. So I was inspired by that quotation. And there's another quotation, something that I heard a long time ago, and it's very powerful to me, from Suzuki Roshi again. And, I keep a notebook where I do some journaling, and I keep lists. So I have lists, and, when there's something of significance, I do journaling. And I've got these now going back more than 30 years. Keep them in those lab notebooks, which are very durable. And every time I get a new notebook, I write this quotation in it. Suzuki Roshi said, "Life is like stepping onto a boat which is about to sail out to sea and sink." Life is like stepping onto a boat which is about to set out to sail. Life is like stepping onto a boat which is about to sail out to sea and sink. I think when I first started copying this out, there was just something about that, the language and the image that caught my imagination. But with the passing years, I realized, oh my God, it's really true. We're setting sail, we're going out to sea. We don't know what our destination is. And by the way, along the journey, we're going to sink. This is birth and death. Setting out to sea and then sinking. So today in service, we observed what in East Asia would be the parinirvana ceremony for Shakyamuni Buddha. This is the calendar day that is observed for the Buddha's death is February 15th, Tuesday, February 15th this year. And so, usually if we were in person, we would have a large ceremony either inside or outside the Zendo. But I abbreviated it this year because I feel that the ceremonies, there's certain ceremonies, or many of the ceremonies, we really want to do in person. And so we did this as a service today. But I was thinking again of in the Parinirvana Sutra, there's two, by the way, there's two Parinirvana Sutras. There is a Pali Parinibbana Sutta, which is an earlier manifestation, which is basically a long story of the Buddha's last months and his last teachings. It's a wonderful text, and you can find it online as I said, the Parinibbana Sutta. And then there's a Mahayana version, the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, which is quite different. It's not the story of the Buddha's last period of life, and it's also it's a wonderful and very challenging sutra. It's not as immediately accessible, I think, as the Pali text. So in that text, we have a record of the Buddha's last words, or purportedly his last words. And those were, all conditioned things are subject to decay. Work out your salvation with care, or work out your salvation with diligence. You have to work this out. Each of us has to work this out for ourselves in the face of the fact that impermanence is the law, that conditioned things are subject to decay, that they go away. In Zazen, what we experience is thought after thought goes away. It arises. It might seem very compelling, and then it sinks into the sea. So this attitude that we have, we recognize, we may not remember when we stepped into the boat, but we do recognize that we're on a journey. And I think in a certain point in our life, we also recognize, oh, we're going to sink. Because this body that we have, as it is conditioned, is subject to impermanence. And I think that when the second part of that message, to work out our salvation with care or with diligence, as I've said before, is a message about how we face impermanence. And our attitude towards impermanence makes all the difference. When we resist it, then we are bound to suffer. So this is part of this is pertinent to the 3 marks of existence, which are also fundamental Buddhist teaching. The 3 marks of existence is that things are impermanent, that there's no fixed self, and that there is suffering. So that's the early Buddhist version. In certain of the Mahayana texts, the three marks are a little different. They're impermanence, non-self or emptiness, and nirvana. So, to me, we can ask, why is one way and one the other way? And I think what this is saying is your attitude, whether you suffer or whether you experience salvation or release or nirvana, is contingent on your attitude towards impermanence and non-self. If those seem like difficult conditions, or if impermanence seems like a bad idea, then you are going to suffer. I am going to suffer. And I'm not immune from those thoughts. If you recognize that those are really just the conditions, then that means, as Thich Nhat Hanh says, that our life is just a continuation of one form to another. So, once you sink, your being takes other forms. It dissolves and nourishes. Maybe it nourishes the fish. Maybe it generates oxygen, but it creates life in other dimensions. And when you can understand that, then impermanence and non-self are fine. They're just fine. And I think for many of us, sometimes we feel that way and sometimes we don't. I think one of the things that comes with a real confidence in the Dharma is a stronger sense of sureness about this. And also, it's a refuge that we understand how our lives work. We understand that their lives are basically impossible, and that's fine. We understand that we're stepping into a boat and sailing out to sea and sinking, and that's fine. Everyone, is that a sound that you're hearing? Everyone who has ever lived has done exactly that, has set out to sail, set out to sea and sunk. And it's true of us, it's true of our children, it's the way of our lives. So I want to just shift a little. Yesterday, a number of us from Berkeley Zen Center went out to visit our Sangha member, Stephanie Seaborg, and her husband, Chris Price. Stephanie was a head Sheden here for a long time and was always just wonderful presence. And I found her, I dug around and I found her Dharma name, which is Engetsu Onko. Wonderful name that Sojin gave her in 2014, which means empty moon, peaceful light. Ingetsu Onko. So I guess, she was towards the end of her life. And a few days ago, she had expressed to Chris, her husband, that she wanted to go to the Zendo. And some folks who've been visiting her and helping, and Chris had talked and decided that didn't seem realistic at all. So let's bring the Zendo to her. So they live out in Canyon. I hadn't been out in Canyon for like 35 years. It's an extraordinary place. It's kind of like, it's over the hill. When you go up to Tilden, then you go down a little down to the east into the depths of that valley, and Canyon's there. It's a remarkable place where everyone knows each other, and it's a little wild, and it seems like it belongs to another time. But it was just going there. It was like sort of like entering the Shires or something. It's like really entering another world, driving over there. So about a dozen people from the Zendo went out, and there were also Stephanie's family, her two kids, and her sister, and a number of neighbors. And so we brought the Zendo out there. It was a beautiful spring day, and the blossoms were opening. And Stephanie was on a bed laid out in the middle of the living room, just light streaming in through the windows, and just a wide green hillside that you could look out on. And she was breathing shallowly, and we chanted. We chanted the Heart Sutra and the Metta Sutta and the Enmei-juku Kanran-gyo for protecting life. And then an echo dedicating the merit to her well-being, the well-being of her family and everyone. And it was just a beautiful feeling. I will say, it's the first time in 2 years that I've heard 20 people chanting together. And it just filled the room with warm sound. It sounded really good. And that room was filled with love. You could feel it as soon as you walked in. So I was really glad for the opportunity to go out there. And it saddens me to say that in the early morning hours or early evening hours last night, Stephanie passed away. It seemed to me, in my inexpert eye, that she was close, but she was really peaceful. And I gathered that she died easily and peacefully. So I wanted to share that with you. And somehow that fits with the Buddha's parinirvana, and it fits with setting out to sea and sinking. It's a loss that certainly the family will feel hard, and many people who are close to her will feel. But I'm just struck by how peaceful it was out there, and also how fitting our Dharma was, and how wonderful that we could offer that. It's the fact of that stayed with me all day, and it's with me now. Just in the midst of this impossible life, we have been given some marvelous gift by which we can appreciate even the impossibility. Life is basically impossible. What are we going to do? You do it every day. So, I don't really have much more to say today. I can leave us open uh, for questions and comments, for feelings about uh, the Buddha's passing away, Stephanie's passing away, our own passing away. But I'd like to open it up, and I'll turn it back to Blake to facilitate that, okay? Thank you.
Good Sangha members, welcome. So, as usual, you can raise your digital hand or type into the chat. And I just ask that we be brief in the spirit of sharing this space together. So go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like. So, a question for Hozan. Please offer anonymously, that's to me. I ask a lot of, how does sinking in a boat compare to sinking into practice?
Oh, that's a really good question. In certain ways, we have this word we call practice in English, and it's applied to learning an instrument or some athletic endeavor. We practice the same moves over and over again until there's a unity of thought and muscle memory. So our practice, our Zen practice, even though we think it's about the mind, which it is, it's also really about the body. And so we practice over and over again. And what are we practicing for? Are we practicing for the Olympics? Are we practicing for a concert? In a certain way, you could say we're learning how to die. We're practicing letting go and sinking into the sea. And we're doing that, we do that moment by moment in Zazen. We let go of each thought. We let go of our conceptions. We see them. We can give a small bow to them, but we're letting them, we are enacting the fact that conditioned things are subject to decay and that that's okay. We are learning this at a molecular level. And so that's kind of the resonance for me within your question about our practice and sinking in the sea. I hope that makes sense to you. Anonymous person.
I invite Maria Teresa to unmute themselves and ask a question. If they could put it in video is optional, I guess. Thank you.
Good morning, Hozan. This is Maria. Hi. Very well. Thank you. Thank you for this very inspirational to me talk. I want to ask a question that seems maybe rhetorical, but what passes away?
That's a really good question. Certainly what passes away is, I can say with some sureness, or perhaps faith, our idea of ourself. I really remember vividly, it was a very powerful moment. Our friend, one of my early mentors or guides here at Berkeley Zen Center was Fran Tribe, who some of you remember. And she died at, unfortunately, an early age, and pretty swiftly of cancer. And actually, when she was in the hospital, the entire Sangha got together and in one day sewed her a one-jo brown robe, and Sojin gave her Dharma transmission in the hospital. It was really wonderful. And one thing she said, I think it might have been on that occasion, was, this is, in her last few days, that she observed that the skandhas were coming apart. That was her perception. So the skandhas are what they're the elements, forms, feelings, perceptions, formations, consciousness, that out of which we form or construct a sense of self. So I think that certainly that's something that disappears when we die. And then there's great debate. Of course, the orthodoxy that we're given is that there's no self, so there's no self that continues from one life to the other. And at the same time, is the conundrum in the theories of, in the very, very complex theories of rebirth that there is something energetic that continues. And then you start looking even more carefully at some of these Mahayana texts, and they actually seem to say there is a self that continues, but it's not the self that you think it is. And all of that is beyond my understanding. When you asked Sojin about rebirth, I've heard him say, "I don't remember." So I think I have to leave it at that. But thank you for that question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Raghav, I invite you to unmute yourself and ask a question.
Good morning.
Good morning, Raghav.
I just wanted to share something. When I heard Edward Brown talk about that quote last week, not much came to my mind. But then I've been dealing with a few things this week, and what came to my mind is, life is impossible in the sense I am trying to keep my child from dying. That is kind of, I noticed that was a clutched idea very deep. I don't want them, my children, to get sick and die. But at the same time, that is what happens. And another clutched idea is, I don't want the same thing to happen to me. I don't want to get sick and die, but that is what happens. And what I was going through was like, how do I reconcile the both? And that was causing a lot of suffering. And what happened is, as I was listening to you talk earlier, also I was going through all those emotions. But then, when I just said, notice my energy, just pay attention to what's going on, the thoughts went away. Those thoughts went away. And then there was just the body. And that came in relation to, I think, Ten's question a week ago or something about belief. What is the belief? What are the belief? For me right now, belief is belief in the practice. When we practice it, when we notice the change, when the ideas drop away and the suffering lessens, that is belief in practice. And the ideas will come up again. It'll create a storm again. But belief is that I can get my mind maybe back to thinking, paying attention to the body again. Just wanted to share that.
Thank you. For me, let me just propose the word faith, which has more power for me than belief. I'm wary of belief, but I'm not wary in the same way of faith. And it's part of the impossibility is just, the thoughts that you had about your children, about yourself, make complete sense. And, the peculiar thing is that we give birth to children knowing what, really, if we think about it at all, we know what the windup is going to be, right? And still, we do that. To do it every day is an act of faith. And that is, I think that's really important. And this is our faith in practice. Our faith in practice is not an idea. It's actually an activity. Doing it every day is an activity. So thank you for that.
Sally and or Ed, I invite you to unmute yourself and speak.
Hi, Hozan.
Hi, Ed.
My question involves when a dear loved one passes away,
Mm-hmm.
how do you deal with the deep grief that sometimes feels like it will go on? And
Yeah.
not suffer.
I think that we have to really have to embrace the whole mess as part of our life. You're not going to banish suffering. It's not going to happen. It helps, for me, it helps to first to have some awareness and then look for how that awareness appears. The awareness is that the suffering is not seamless. It's not the entirety of what's going on moment by moment. At first, it may be pretty close to that, right?
Yes.
But generally, it doesn't stay that way.
Yeah.
Although there's a fear, I think, and this is also something to look at. The fear is that we will be cast back into that eternity of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is still a seed of it there.
Well,
and I think we have to respect that.
It seems like when I just let myself grieve, there's no suffering.
Right. So you can let the tears come. You can shout. You can rage. All of that. All of those expressions of emotion are part of the entirety of being human.
Yes.
But this is, the Buddha realm that we live in, which is the Buddha realm where Shakyamuni Buddha, the eternal Shakyamuni Buddha, is in charge or watching over, sort of like God, I'm afraid, except he doesn't do anything. But the world that we're in is known as the Saha world. And so the very condition, so in order to wake up and to become a Buddha in the Saha world, you have to deal with the conditions of the Saha world. And Saha means the world in which things have to be endured.
Mm. Oh boy.
You didn't ask for this. This is not what we signed up for, but it is what we got. But,
even though it feels unendurable.
Yeah. Well, this is our practice: is enduring the unendurable, bearing the unbearable. And all I can say is by looking at human history, it's safe to say you can do this.
Yeah.
Which is not to say I want you to or you want to, but so many people are bearing the unbearable every moment.
Yes.
And we do have our practice. This is what refuge means. Shelter in that practice. Thanks. Take care.
Perhaps in that spirit, Hozan, Jerry Oliva writes, what about reframing this to life is full of possibilities, or in life everything is possible?
Yeah. I think that's accurate. So long, it depends on what you mean by everything. I think that in these expressions, Suzuki Roshi was trying to give us some very perhaps strong tasting medicine that he felt it was important to convey. It's also really important to remember, and this is something I've been thinking about. I meant to say, I've been sorting through Liz Horowitz with Ross's help, has gathered like hundreds of photographs that were in Sojin's in photo albums and in sort of piles of photos. There's a lot of photographs from very early BZC days and also early Tassajara days. So going back to the 60s and early 70s. And all of the people, including some who are probably here today, lo and behold, they were very young. Really young. They were kids. It's really amazing to see Ron Nestor, in his early 20s, and others who we know, Maley, all of these people that we now see in our seniority, really, really young. So the message that Suzuki Roshi was giving in these settings often were to people whose experience of life was relatively limited. So when we hear that life is basically impossible, or that's like setting out to sea and sinking, some of us at this stage of life, it has a kind of different impact. But he was preparing his students. So yeah, you could, I think reframing that is fine. And it's also important to get the strong medicine. Any last questions before we close, or any last comments?
There is a comment here. Can you talk about bearing the pain of someone who may die, but may not? but the outcome after either way is not so good.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's, I actually spoke to someone this week, in a circumstance similar to what you described, where their partner is in that situation. And I think that's probably, I think that Chris Price and his family experienced that with Stephanie. When I think about the friend that I spoke to earlier this week, all I can say to hear the story is, how do I hold it? How does the partner hold it? And how does the person who is actually experiencing hold it? Those are three different realities. I found myself feeling primarily for the person who was in decline, and recognizing that it's a person that I care about and that I know, and that person is seeing their increasing fragility, physical and mental fragility, and I really feel for them. And I also feel for the partner. There's often, that's a whole other thing to explore. A partner can be really left alone with the burden of another's decline and illness. And this is why, again, I'm grateful for this practice, because within this practice, we actually do our best to support each other. And we're taught to support each other. And again, this is something that we've had to arrive at ourselves, drawing on resources that are really out there in terms of hospice and chaplaincy and just presence. But again, some of the conditions of our Japanese teachers who came here, they, at least from what Sojin said, Suzuki Roshi was kind of, he particularly didn't train his students in how to do funerals and memorials and all of these things, because this was kind of the rabbit hole that Zen priests went down in Japan, part of what they wanted to leave behind. And they were fortunate they had mostly a young Sangha, so that wasn't happening all the time. But it's happening all the time for us. And we need to know how to take care of the living and take care of ourselves and each other who are taking care of the living. And we also, I'm really grateful. I feel that Sojin taught me very carefully as kind of apprentice. I watched him really carefully, how he took care of people who were dying and how he took care of people who had died and how he took care of himself in that circumstance. So these are important. These are important issues. These are important matters for us to study and help each other with, so that we don't feel alone. This is why this is the Sangha refuge, is for not feeling alone. So I think that's a good place to end for today. Thank you. And for those in Sesshin, let's enjoy the rest of the day. It's still beautiful out. And for those who are at large, well, you enjoy it too. Thank you.